The Evil Dead franchise has never been subtle. It has always pushed horror to its absolute limits. And Evil Dead Burn is no different. Let's see if it's one of the best entries in the franchise. Let's talk about it. Today I'm reviewing Evil Dead Burn. This is a movie that has the impossible task of trying to follow the previous films in the franchise while also establishing its own identity. So the good news, it absolutely delivers on the horror, blood, and gore that you come to expect from an Evil Dead film. But it often mistakes shock value for being effective. By the end of this review, I will let you know whether Evil Dead Burn deserves to stand amongst the other Evil Dead films or if it burns out. So let's start with what worked here. Right from the beginning of the film, you know exactly what kind of experience you have just walked into. The inciting incident of the film, centered around a tragic family death, is deeply effective. It immediately creates mystery, dread, and a really unsettling feeling that something is really wrong here. Leading up to this, the film starts with a fisherman sequence. And man, what an opening that was. It's brutal, bloody, and utilizes the environment for some really creative kills. And if there was any doubt in my mind that the film was going to hold back from there on out, it immediately went away. The gore here is relentless, and the sound effects are disgusting, and it immediately just ramps up the tension. And you understand that no one is safe in this film. After the opening, we follow Alice, who is this film's protagonist. And I would say that she is one of the strongest protagonists we've had in an Evil Dead movie. She doesn't just simply react to the Deadites. She's also carrying emotional baggage from her ex-husband and an abusive relationship. These experiences give the character a lot of depth and help us sympathize for her throughout the film. And that's why I would argue some of this film's best scenes are not even the horror sequences. They're the quieter conversations where Alice really feels like a real character, and we get to really understand her psyche and her past. And speaking of her ex-husband, you genuinely want something bad to happen to him. He is a terrible person. Now, one area where Evil Dead Burn might be the best in the franchise is the action sequences. The action choreography here is phenomenal, and the cinematography and the shaking of the camera during the action sequences just adds to the tension and the effectiveness. There is an action sequence that is shot in a oneer inside of the house that you may have seen in one of the trailers that warrants the price of admission alone. Another action scene that really stands out to me is a close quarters fight scene inside of a vehicle using an armchair rest. Again, that's something that I really like about the Evil Dead franchise, is how creative it can be with its environment and its kills. It's claustrophobic and creative, and it does establish that this film should be a part of the franchise. Moving past the action scenes, there also is a funeral sequence towards the beginning of the film that is really emotionally draining and adds to the darkness of this film. It establishes Alice as an outsider in this family, and it shows us just how corrupt this family has become. This emotional isolation that is laid out early is incredibly important throughout the film as the family starts to turn into Deadites. And speaking of Deadites, they are really relentless this time around. They're crawling on the ceiling, crawling towards us, yelling at people, throwing stuff at people, ripping limbs off, all kinds of really gross and depraved stuff. But it all culminates in a central theme that I find really interesting, which is, what if the Deadites that were trying to kill you are your actual family members? This emotional conflict really adds something beyond just monsters attacking people. And we also need to talk about the pre-established lore that is added on by this film. Rather than repeating the same mythology, the film decides to actually expand on it and utilizes several ideas that were explored in the Ash vs. Evil Dead television series. This makes the Evil Dead franchise seem larger within a smaller, family-contained story. And despite how graphic and really gross this film is, it also finds time to be funny. Specifically, the grandmother is a standout here, and she adds a lot of funny moments, especially once things start to get really dire and scary. Even the end credit scene left me smiling. It's really dark, but it's really, really kind of crazy how far they went with it. So definitely stay to the end of the credits. Now, unfortunately, this film is not without its problems. Let's talk about what didn't work here. The biggest issue with this film is that it just is too long. There's a shot near the end that features a red skyline and a silhouette of a figure running towards us, and I really thought that should be the ending shot. Another issue here is the overuse of jump scares. There's a very familiar formula that repeats itself throughout this film. Loud noise, silence, action scene. Loud noise, silence, action scene, repeat and repeat. And it gets a little exhausting and honestly, derivative. And then we need to go back to the shock value. Now, I understand. Evil Dead has always been extreme. That's part of its identity as a franchise. However, I think this film really pushes the envelope in regards to what it does to certain characters and animals in particular. There is a brutality involving a family dog that I just found really upsetting and not fun or entertaining to watch by any stretch of the imagination. Likewise, there is also a scene of a deadite shooting themselves in the face because they are deeply disturbed by how possessed they are, and that was also just really hard to watch and felt like just shock for shock value's sake. So a lot of these times, I was just waiting for the scene to end because I was not having fun with it. And now that I'm out of the theater, it just doesn't seem like it added anything to the story or the narrative as a whole. We also need to talk about an inconsistency relating to how quickly people turn into deadites. Some people turn into deadites immediately, and then some take a very long time. And I was thinking to myself, this film is establishing rules of continuity, but it's refusing to follow them. So that didn't work for me. And we have a classic horror movie problem. People making incredibly stupid decisions. Characters opening the Book of the Dead and summoning them again after we've seen this like almost 7 times now. People opening windows with a deadite looking at them and jeering at them. It's ridiculous. And you really start wondering why everyone is making so stupid decisions. So this film often is derivative and feels like other Evil Dead films we've seen before with just more shock value that adds nothing to it. So, is Evil Dead Burn worth watching? I would say absolutely. If you are an Evil Dead fan, that is. This movie will deliver exactly what Evil Dead fans are looking for. The gore, the shock, and the horror. On the caffeinated scale, I'm going to give Evil Dead Burn an average cup of joe. But those are my thoughts on Evil Dead Burn. Please let me know what you thought of the Evil Dead film in the comment section down below. Do you have a favorite Evil Dead film? Please let me know. And feel free to like, subscribe, and I will continue brewing new reviews for you very soon. I will see you next time.